What's up, guys? Welcome back to another daily Bible reading snapshot. Today we're starting the brand new book of Jeremiah, looking at the first two chapters here, and then we're going to be looking at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Now, Jeremiah, we're continuing to look at prophecy here. So you're going to read, and it's going to sound similar to the beginning of the book of Isaiah. Actually, it's going to sound similar to Isaiah chapter 6, where there's the call of Isaiah, because here we see the call of Jeremiah. The difference is, obviously, we're talking about a different person, different prophecy book, and this takes place years and years after the book of Isaiah. So Isaiah comes long before Jeremiah. This is almost 60, 80 years around before Jeremiah's time. So Jeremiah is after Isaiah. It describes his time period. He's specifically prophesying during the days of Josiah and then the last kings. Now, Josiah, when he died in about 609, 608, 609 BC, there was a bunch of kings that just went down right away. So that's why when there's four kings or three kings being described, it all is happening pretty fast. But we're going to run into a few of those people later on. Now, God's going to call Jeremiah to be a prophet. And here's what he says. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, right? Which again, true of every person. Obviously, God knows everyone before they're born. But in Jeremiah's case, he has a particular mission that he has for him to do. It says, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations, not just to Israel. Obviously, this is going to go beyond. It's going to go to us, which is why, we're reading this right now. God knew that we were going to read this book. God knew that we were going to read Jeremiah's prophecy. Then Jeremiah said to God, I'm just a youth. I don't know how to speak. I'm not the one who should be talking for you. And God says to him, don't say, I'm just a youth. For to all whom I send you, you shall go, and whatever I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord. And God says he puts his word in his mouth, and he's going to preach, and he's going to be the one to be the spokesman for God. Now, what is Jeremiah's message? You might think, okay, this could be good news. This could be a lot of different things. What does God want to tell the people of Judah? Well, bad news. You guys have continued in sin, even after the days of Isaiah, and God's judgment is coming. Now, Isaiah was first. Jeremiah is now this next prophet that we're reading. This comes much later. And the reason I said Judah is because Israel, the northern tribes, are not even a kingdom anymore. They were taken down during the days of the prophet Isaiah. So sometimes in Isaiah, we saw speech about Israel, the northern tribes, and Judah. Now we're going to see a little bit about both, but really only one is surviving right now. Only Judah is left. So God tells Jeremiah, be strong, be courageous. He says, you're going to have a lot of reason why you're going to want to stop preaching. You're going to have a lot of reason why you're going to want to be quiet, but you need to keep speaking. Don't be afraid of these people. Now, chapter 2, he starts to get into the message. What's the message to the people? Well, the people of Judah were like a bride that got married, and right after she got married, this bride turned and cheated on her spouse. That is what Judah has done. And it's done that with the Lord. The Lord was their husband. It's like the people of Israel, and Judah, they were married to God. God said, you're my people. I commit to you. I make a covenant to you. You need to make a covenant to me. And they made this covenant. And immediately the people of Israel and Judah broke the covenant. And that's what's being described here. It even says that they are just continuing to take God's gifts. It's like all the gifts from the wedding. It's like this lady is taking all the gifts that she was given for this wedding, specifically from the groom, and she's taking those and spending those on committing adultery with other people. It's horrible. It's terrible. That's what's being described here about these Israelites. He says, you've transgressed against me. You've gone to the prophets of Baal. You've gone to these other false gods. And then God says this, be shocked, O heavens, be utterly appalled, be utterly desolate, declares the Lord. For my people have committed two evils. So there's two things that the people of Israel have done wrong. What is it? Number one, they've forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and they've hewed out for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. What that's saying is it's like God is this fountain of water for the people, and they have left the fountain of water, and they've dug holes in the ground to try to put water in them, but the holes have holes in them, and you put water in these holes in the ground, and all of the water goes out. So God is saying, you have left me, the real God, the true God, the one that can bless you and honor you and give you good gifts and to be your good God. You left me to serve these other gods, and they're not even real gods, and they won't help you. All they'll do is take from your livelihood, from your righteousness. It will just be bad for you. And that's what happens even today when people want to serve God and then they turn to their sinful ways. It's like, yeah, you've left God and you've gone after your sin. Those are broken cisterns. It's like holes in the ground that don't hold any water. You try to pour water, and you imagine like a jar in the ground, so to speak. You put a jar in the ground and bury it and kind of put it around and then pour your water in it, and it would hold your water. Problem is, if the jar is broken, it can't hold any water. That's what he's describing here. He says, any idol is like that. So you should know, Israelites, you should know that serving God is righteous. You should also know that it's going to be evil and bitter for you if you forsake the Lord. That's verse 19. Then it says, here it says, on every high hill, under every green tree, you've committed adultery. You've done terrible things. It says you are planted like a choice vine, a pure seed, but instead you've turned your purity into impurity by serving these other gods. And as you read this, you're going to see a little bit of the description of what their sin was like. And I want you to know as you read this, seems to be like God's using the language of sexual sin to describe their leaving the worship of God. And that's not on accident, because a lot of the worship of these false gods was all built around sexual sin. It was built around people even cheating on their spouses with other people to worship these other gods. So just know it's not an accident that he uses so much language. It sounds like, why does he keep talking about like adultery and sexual sin here? Well, it's because that is actually what was taking place in the worship center. Which, again, when you think and take a step back, you might have wondered, why would these people ever stop serving God? Why would they ever go after these idols that they know aren't true? Well, because what it meant to worship those idols and what it meant to worship those gods fed their flesh. It fed their appetites and their desires for the sexual sin that is being described here. So just know it's not an accident why that happens. And it wasn't just the men. It was the men and it was the women who were doing this. He says, you've been living in this thick darkness. And you've said afterwards, you said, I'm innocent. His anger's turned from me. God doesn't care. I mean, if God doesn't judge it immediately, God must not care. They're mistaken and they're wrong. And that's one of the messages that Jeremiah is preaching to a people who are full of sin. He says, just because you are living in your sin and you think you've gotten away with it doesn't mean that God doesn't know, and it doesn't mean that God won't judge. And it's a similar message that we have today for people. Look, I know you're living in your sin and you think that's all okay, but God is going to judge. I mean, you tell someone God's going to judge sin and they'll laugh at you. They'll say, no way. God would never judge sin. God doesn't care about this type of sin. That's exactly what they were saying in Jeremiah's day. That's why it took courage for Jeremiah to stand up and preach. And that's why it takes courage for you to stand up and be a representative of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's going to take courage. You're not going to be embraced by many people. And Jeremiah wasn't either. So it's a helpful, as you read about Jeremiah, it's going to be a helpful example for you in that. So now we're looking at 2 Thessalonians here. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, there's a concern that these people have that perhaps, maybe, they got left behind. Maybe when Jesus came back, they didn't get the Thessalonians. And that concerned them, that Jesus may have come back to earth. And Paul says, no, you don't understand. That has not taken place yet. Jesus has not come back. I know you're concerned about that. Don't be alarmed. Don't be shaken. Someone's going to have to come first. He says, before this return, you're going to see the man of lawlessness is going to be revealed. Before all things are brought together, there's going to be this person that's going to come, and that's going to be the sign. And you're going to know that. And you're going to see how he's going to fulfill the prophecies of Daniel. And that's going to be a terrible thing for people. And it says God's going to send a strong delusion on people. And they're going to believe the evil things that this guy is doing. This Antichrist figure that we see described in the book of Daniel, also described in Revelation. He's also described here in 2 Thessalonians 2. It says he's going to be doing all these different false signs, and people are going to believe that he works for God when the reality is he's working against God. Now, the command for Christians is, if all that's true, you need to stand firm. You need to know that things are going to be hard, just like in the book of Jeremiah. Things are going to be hard, but you need to stand firm. Comfort people's hearts and encourage them. Make them grow strong as they trust in God. That's something that you should be a part of every day. If you can be helping encourage other Christians to stand firm, you're like Paul in this, and that's a helpful thing. I want you to be encouraged and for you to stand firm, but don't just take that message for yourself. Give that to other Christians as well. So thanks for reading. We'll see you back tomorrow from the Daily Bible Reading Snapshot.